is very good off-road, as you would kind of expect. It sounds so good. It just reminds you that this thing is, yeah, it's starting to feel its age. Woo! That sounds awesome. G'day guys, check this out. We're here with the all-new Nissan Patrol Warrior. Yes, it's based on the standard Nissan Patrol Ti, which is the lower spec, but they've added a ton of modifications underneath the skin, including a new exhaust. We have new suspension. In fact, there's a lot of changes, which we'll of course go through today, which makes this thing 101,000 Australian dollars. So actually more expensive than the top of the line TIL. Today I'm going to take you for a full detailed tour of the Nissan Patrol Warrior. We're going to check out all of the exterior changes. We're going to see the practicality, check out the interior as well, because there's been a few changes in there, but also one big not change that's happened that still pisses me off to this day. Then we're going to take this thing off-road. We're going to drive it on-road, give it some sauce, and we're going to launch it. See just how quick it is from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. And after all of that, I'll get to my final thoughts and whether you should buy a new Nissan Patrol Warrior or whether you should just save your money, buy a Ti and just modify it yourself. Let's get into it. If you're anything like me, you're a bit of a perv and you want to know more about the insides of your car. And that's where Daddy Carly has you covered. Carly is way more than just a standard OBD2 port scanner, although it will scan every single OBD2 port, which is most cars. Using low energy Bluetooth, you can connect to the Carly app and from there, it's wild. Using Carly, you can read out all the codes in your car, including clearing them as well. You can even code features into your car that you didn't originally have if you have a BMW or any Volkswagen Group product car. But probably the most helpful feature that Carly provides, for me at least, is the Smart Mechanic feature. I might not know my way around knobs and switches, but with Carly, I certainly do. You can also see live telemetric data about your car, and you can run a used car check so you can see any discrepancies in the odometer. So click the link in the description below and get your Carly today. All right, so let's talk about the exterior now of the Nissan Patrol Warrior. So this actually starts its life as a Nissan Patrol Ti. It comes into Premcar in Victoria, and then it kind of gets chopped up. Different pieces are added to it. And what you'll see is up front, you get a revised bumper. In fact, it's very revised. They take it off and they chop it up and they put this Warrior branding on it, but it's not just branding. You do get a 40-degree approach angle from the front. So a pretty severe angle. And as you'll see, when we take this thing off-road, that's quite beneficial. The other thing that's very beneficial is the very red steel bash plate underneath the underbody protection. Trust me, we need that, especially when we're doing stupid off-road. Other things as well, you get a blacked out grille with the Nissan badge there. It's essentially like getting a black pack on your car going for the Warrior, but it's not just aesthetic. Otherwise, it is still very Nissan Patrol. So you get these LED lights here that are also your turning signals. You get pretty bright LED lights there as well. And a lot of people are gonna ask, well, why didn't they just go for the TIL, the top of the range, and make that into a Warrior? Well, apparently it was considered, but the thing is that that is less off-road focused than a Ti, because you get a bigger bumper, you get roof rails up top, and when you add the suspension lift to that, it actually makes it so that it can't fit into most parking garages. So we have to keep that in mind. But otherwise, a great looking car from the front. Let's check out the side. Okay, so coming to the side now, this is where the biggest changes are. So we have these 18-inch wheels here, which look so small because we have massive, I think they're 295 rubber on them, Yokohama Geolandar all-terrain tires. Just a huge amount of tread. They're also 70 wide, so yeah, definitely great off-roading tires straight from the factory. And that's kind of the appeal of the Nissan Patrol Warrior, is that you go to your dealership, you buy a car, and everything is done through the dealership. If you have any warranty issues, it could be, if it's related to suspension, for example, done by Premcar, but it's all through your dealership, and so you don't actually have to worry about the back end of that. Speaking of suspension, there are major changes to the suspension. So this thing has hydraulic dampers within it, which means that essentially there's a passive hydraulic system that moves around as the car experiences different gravity forces. So, you know, if you're braking really hard, the oil shifts to the front to stop it from, you know, just flipping over. So it's a really cool system, and they have actually changed at all four corners those little, I guess, chutes that throws it around the car. And that makes a huge difference for on-road performance, as you'll see. They've also added new springs. They're softer at the front and they're firmer at the rear. In fact, they're 3-stage at the rear from 1 stage. So they've got different levels of springiness, essentially. And again, that makes huge changes to the way that this thing drives, but also wheel articulation off-road. It's quite impressive. Like a standard Patrol though, you have this little garnishing there, just says Patrol on it. A 360 camera, which is pretty good, especially for the Ti spec. You've also got some decent enough side steps. I whacked these so many times off-road yesterday and there was no damage to it, so can confirm they hold up pretty well. You have some very chrome door handles here with keyless entry and go. Privacy glass there as well. You're also going to notice the Warrior badging down the side and the V8 badge there too. More importantly, at least to me though, you have side exit exhausts. So they've actually changed the whole exhaust system from the cats to the rear of the car, but it still has a rear exhaust outlet. One of the big things as well with buying a Nissan Patrol Warrior is that it meets ADR or Australian design requirements. So a lot of the time, if you put an exhaust on one of these, it might technically actually be illegal. In a lot of cases, it often is. Same with suspension. This thing has a GVM upgrade to be able to take all of these suspension. It's about 150 kilograms. So all of these changes combined, make this technically a more legal car than a lot of the Nissan Patrols that you might be seeing. But it also sounds absolutely incredible. Let's take a listen. Okay, so coming to the bum now of the Nissan Patrol Warrior. What's it like? Well, you've got the LED lights back here. They look pretty decent, although to be honest, it's starting to age a bit in my mind. This thing has been on sale since like 2012, although the best month of sales was actually last month. So you guys seem to love it. Warrior badge there too, so everyone knows that you've got the most expensive factory Patrol. You've got the Nissan badge there, Patrol spelt out there too. It's a big bum on this thing, but I actually quite like the way that it looks. Also, the rear has been redesigned, so you get a full-size spare under the car with these same tires on it. And so as a result of that, they had to redesign the bumper and also the towing mount. So this thing still has a 3.5 ton towing capacity, which is great to see. It's also got a 120 kilogram GVM upgrade, which translates to 48 kilograms in increased carry capacity, because obviously all of this extra stuff adds extra weight. And you get a redesigned bumper with these two tow recovery points at the back as well. So yeah, quite a lot of changes underneath the skin, and it still meets those ADR requirements, which is always a good thing to see. How much can it fit inside of its bum? Well, it's actually pretty decent. So no powered tailgate here for the Ti spec, but it's a 468 litres behind the third row with all three rows up. Of course, this is an 8-seat SUV, which is insane. We'll come back to that. You do get a little bit of underfloor storage, though not very much. Still, it is very usable considering it does have 3 rows. Of course, you can drop the third row and the second row to get even more space in the back. So yeah, all very impressive stuff. Let's check out the interior. Okay, so coming to the interior now of the Nissan Patrol Warrior, what has changed? Well, gone is the faux wood grain. Instead, you get Alcantara, which is actually quite nice. So you got some Alcantara. Ooh, or here you have the Warrior badge up here as well. Those are new panels. These ones, they've just kind of put a skin over the wood, fake wood behind it, but who cares? It looks so much better. They've also taken off these panels here and they've actually sprayed them and put them back in. So yeah, this whole black area here, it's not like your usual piano black plastic. It doesn't smudge as easily. It's actually quite nice. Otherwise, the design and everything else is pretty much the same, which in one large aspect is a disappointment, because this display here, it's just so old school now for like a brand new car. Other markets, every other market really gets the newer display except for right-hand drives. I drove it when I was in the US, the Armada with the newer display, and it really does make a huge difference. Elevates the interior a lot. You have to just use this dial here. It's slow, no Apple CarPlay, no Android Auto. It's just a massive disappointment, if I'm being totally honest. Also, all the buttons here, that used to be really cool in like the early 2000s. That's how you knew you had money back in the day. But it's not really about that anymore, and it just looks a little tacky, if I'm being totally honest. But you guys clearly don't care because you keep buying it. So you can let me know what you think in the comment section below. I do love the analog gauges up in front of you because frankly, they're cool. They just work. You get to see the engine really revving out. It just feels pretty awesome. So I don't mind that, but I do mind that. Otherwise, it's a Ti spec Nissan Patrol in here. So we have a massive, really nice leather center armrest, but there is no fridge in it like you'd find in the TIL. You do have plenty of storage here, a couple of cup holders, more cup holder thingies. You've got a little storage area there too. A couple of USB-A ports and 2 12-volt sockets up front as well. So charging devices is super easy. The glove box itself is also actually pretty massive. Door bins are not the biggest, but they're okay. The steering wheel, it is tilting through one control and then telescoping through another. So that one's a bit odd, but hey, better than a slap in the eye with a dead fish. The steering wheel as well, it feels pretty nice to hold onto in the hands. Nice leather unit. Again, the buttons just feel really old school. It just reminds you that this thing is yeah, it's starting to feel its age. Same with the scrunched leather on the doors. Like, it's a very old touch, but actually I quite like that. And it does definitely feel premium in here, but again, definitely feeling its age. The seats as well, they're a nice leather unit, certainly very comfortable. You can get them into a really good driving position as well with great leg support there too. So apart from those, I don't really have many complaints. You'll see when we take this thing off-road, it's a proper off-roader, but we do have some drive modes here. When we're off-road, we really just use rock. There's on-road, sand and snow. We've also got our locking diff here, of course. We have a low-range transfer case as well, and we have hill descent control. We'll test all those systems when we take it off-road. But as I said, it's definitely feeling a little bit old on the interior, but I do like these Warrior touches, actually. It makes it a lot nicer than the faux wood grain. Let's check out the back seats. Okay, so coming to the back now of the Nissan Patrol, and honestly, every time I get back here, I'm pretty impressed because I'm 5'11", so pretty average height, but I do sit weirdly far back. I have heaps of legroom, heaps of tow room, heaps of headroom as well. So you get a lot of space. You've also got stadium style seating. So these seats are higher than the seats in front. So I get a better view over, but more importantly, my legs are at a great angle. Being the Ti, I'm starting to notice that you don't really miss out on very much. So I'm not sure if I would even stretch for a TIL anymore, to be honest. You do get a third zone of climate control back here. You've got a couple of USB-A ports. The seats back here are really nice and soft leather as well, but still feel very supportive. You pull down the center armrest and you've got a couple of cup holders here. Again, a nice leather unit. You can also do things like recline the seats. Look at this. Unreal. You can have a nap in the back of here. It's pretty damn good. And in terms of warriorness in the back, you've got just a bit of Alcantara there, but it does just feel really nice. I don't know, something about it I really, really like. Other thing, you can access the center armrest from the back, which would be handy if it was still the fridge, but it's not. So I don't know, I'm sure you could aftermarket that. It's pretty impressive. You do have your third row as well, which is okay. It's not the best. Don't have a huge amount of legroom at 5'11". Probably more reserved for kids, but hey, you get it. And there's 3 seats in the back as well, rather than the 2 seats that you get in the TIL. So if you really want to squeeze people in here, you definitely can. In fact, it's one of the last 8-seaters that you can buy, especially one this off-road capable. Let's take this thing off-road. Okay, so let's quickly talk about all the off-roading changes. So up front, we have a revised bumper. We've also got a steel bash plate underneath as well. And so that equates to an approach angle of 40 degrees, which is actually quite significant. The other major change is at the rear, although it's only about 22 degrees of a departure angle. The other thing are the wheels and the tires. We have some really meaty all-terrain tires, as we saw before. Okay, so now we're going through a pretty technical hill here. We put the rear diff on. I think this is where we're going to see that it would be good to have a front diff as well. But really the big advantage of a Patrol, and even the Patrol Warrior in this instance, is that you do get such good wheel articulation that you've pretty much always got a wheel on the ground. So despite looking very hairy on paper, it did a very, very good job. So yes, the Nissan Patrol Warrior is very good off-road, as you would kind of expect. Alrighty, so we are going to go and do some wading here. This thing has a wading depth that I've forgotten off the top of my head, so I'm going to put it on the screen now. The last thing I want to test is the hill descent control. I'm going to press the button here. You'll hear it engages the traction control system to keep us going slower. You can kind of hear it's braking each wheel individually, so my foot is not on the brake. You can hear that. It's quite an interesting sound, interesting sensation. Well, it's not doing a good job at keeping it constant. It's kind of biting it and then letting go, so I'm not sure how good this system is. I think the big thing for me is that it doesn't necessarily feel that much more insanely better than a standard Nissan Patrol, but it clearly has some advantages, especially with these tires and wheels. That definitely makes the biggest difference. But you're not wrong in saying that if you were to go and spend the same amount of money, you could probably get an even more off-road capable Nissan Patrol, but it's really on the road where the big changes are. I will say I'm grateful for that steel bash plate up front, because this thing has bottomed out a couple of times, and you definitely don't want to be damaging the underside of this car. But anyway, I think that's enough off-roading. Let's take this thing on-road and see just how well it drives, because frankly, that's the biggest change. Okay, so driving the Nissan Patrol Warrior. I'm gonna put this window down for a second. Put the car into manual mode. We're in second, let's go back to first, and give it some sauce. Oh, man, that thing sounds good. That bimodal exhaust really does make a difference to how this thing sounds, which, by the way, it already sounded great, right? This just makes it better. We're about to turn onto this intersection quite hard, because I want to show you something. This has hydraulic body motion control. Essentially, its dampers use a passive hydraulic system, and what Premcar have done is they've changed the suspension on this car, and part of the benefit of that is that the hydraulic fluid actually moves around a little bit quicker, a little bit better. So what that should mean is that theoretically we should get less pitching and rolling when we turn a corner. So let's find out. We're going to indicate because we're good boys over here and give it some sauce. And yeah, it's true. It really makes a big difference. So the biggest thing that I noticed when I got into this was not necessarily how it performed off-road. Yes, of course I was impressed by it, but it was truly the on-road performance that was the biggest change for me. Right now we're sitting at 100 kilometers an hour, and I thought the NVH, or noise, vibration and harshness, would be terrible on these wheels, just kind of like it was in the Ranger Wildtrak X, but far from it. And that bimodal exhaust, which, by the way, that active exhaust is not always active, which is a good thing because it's not droning on the highway. It's only when you put your foot down and you get to like over 80 or 90% throttle input that you can hear it opening up. But that's a welcome sound. Road noise is not so much. The other thing as well is the handling. So this thing is 40 millimeters wider. It has a wider track on the road. And so we have a couple of saucy corners here, and when we turn it, the car doesn't just body roll into oblivion, a bit like the Y62 currently does. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing. This thing stays so planted in the corners. For such a big body on frame SUV, far better than what you'd find in, for example, a Toyota LandCruiser 300 for a lot less money. That doesn't mean that everything is that good, because sitting here, it does feel like a bit of an older interior. There's no doubt about that. Even down to the button layout on the steering wheel, and obviously this whole setup here, it's a bit of a broken record, but it does feel kind of old. I don't care when I hear that engine sound though. Sounds so good. But the steering feel has improved marginally. It's not like hugely noticeable, but you can notice it. It definitely turns in better, and you can thank the revised rear suspension for that. Actually, the front got a little bit softer, but the rear, it actually got 3 different levels of spring damping versus the one standard one that you would get in just the regular Patrol. So you can really tell that this thing does turn a corner just better. I will say the transmission it's feeling a bit of its age, to be honest. It's very quick to just downshift or upshift, but it does it a lot, so it can just search for gears. I don't know, when you're going up a hill, for example, it can be kind of annoying because it's just changing gears a lot. Bit of a minor complaint, but it's something I've definitely noticed and something to keep in mind. I can't say the 10 speed in the LandCruiser is much better though. But yes, the biggest takeaway for me was by far the fact that this thing just has better on-road dynamics with the Premcar Warrior. It's just better. And when you combine that with the fact that this is by far the best factory off-road Y62, absolutely you could spend the same and probably do a lot more, but you're kind of not getting that warranty experience, but more importantly, you're probably not meeting the ADR standards. So technically the car is illegal. Not necessarily, but often it is the case. But yeah, even going down this gravel road here, going over some potholes, it's really good. It's so refined, and by far the best driving Y62 Patrol out there. Oh, a big puddle. Let's do it. This car is filthy. It's That's what it's designed for though. Okay, so now we're gonna launch the Nissan Patrol Warrior. Last time we got 6.78 seconds when we launched it. Let's see if this is worse, which I'm thinking it will be just because of the larger tires on it, but hey, we'll find out. Because that's what CarSauce is about. Let's do it. Okay, let's brake boost, launch it. Here we go. Oh, that bimodal exhaust. It's definitely slower, but not that much worse. 0 to 100 in 7.45 seconds. It's not too bad. Let's get into our final thoughts. Okay, so final thoughts on the new Nissan Patrol Warrior. Should you buy one, especially considering that it's about $15,000 more than just the standard Ti that it's based on? Well, honestly, it's really not a bad buy. When you consider that, yes, of course, you could spend 15 grand and achieve pretty similar off-roading outcomes. Good luck doing that for the on-road drivability. But it's kind of like speccing out your own computer. Yes, you could go ahead and build it yourself, but as you add more parts from different manufacturers and things go wrong, my God, it becomes a real hassle. Trust me, I know, I've built my own PC. Whereas if you go out and buy it straight from the manufacturer, you take it back to your dealership if something goes wrong, they fix it. Not to mention you are compliant with the law, because a lot of the time you won't be when you start modifying these things. But you can let me know what you guys think down in the comment section, just below that like button. You can subscribe to the channel as well. Really helps the channel out. You get to see cool car reviews like this. Ciao for now.